You have been waiting. You have been listening for a sound in the silence, straining for a whisper in the wind. You have sent your prayers into what felt like a void, and the only echo that returned was the sound of your own doubt. You believed I had gone quiet. This is the first thing you must understand. I am breaking that silence now. Not because you finally earned it, not because your patience has run its final test, but because now is the moment you are finally able to bear what I have been holding back. This message has navigated the chaos of this world to find you, here, in this exact state of weariness, on purpose. It was always meant to reach you when the silence had done its work. The stillness was not my absence. It was the deepening of the vessel. You have felt a hollowing out, a strange aching emptiness where certainty used to live. You misinterpreted it as abandonment. You thought the hollow space was proof I had left you. It was the opposite. I was making room. I was clearing out the noise, the cluttered prayers born of panic, the desperate deals you tried to make with the universe, the fragile foundations you built on the approval of others. All of it had to go. The silence was the sound of that demolition. It was necessary. It was mercy. You have been asking why for so long. Why the delay? Why the struggle when the path seemed so clear? Why did the door remain shut when you knew, you felt, it was meant for you? I could not give you the blessing while you were still holding the imitation. The cheap substitute you clutched so tightly, believing it was the real thing. I allowed the struggle for it. I allowed the dead ends. I permitted the heartache over the smaller, safer version of the dream you were willing to settle for. You had to wear yourself out trying to open the wrong doors. You had to exhaust every human strategy. You had to come to the end of your own strength, not so I could find you weak, but so you would finally stop trying to do my work for me. The silence was the space between your plan and mine, and in that space, you changed. You were not just waiting. You were being unmade and remade. The person who began this season of longing could not have carried what is coming. They would have crumbled under the weight of it. They would have mistaken it for a trophy and not a tool. They would have ruined it, and themselves with pride. So I waited. I waited while the old version of you, the one built for the barren place, gently fell away. I let you think you were forgotten so you would learn to find your worth not in the harvest, but in the integrity of the root. Do you feel it? The subtle shift in the atmosphere of your spirit? It is not a feeling of excitement. It is a profound calm, a heavy clarity. It is the solid ground of resignation. Not resignation to defeat, but resignation of your own frantic control. That calm is the signal. That is the first blessing of the silent years, the death of your own frantic timing. The urgency you feel now is not a warning of danger. It is the gravitational pull of alignment. Everything that was hidden, the reasons, the redirections, the closed doors that saved your life, is about to be revealed. Not all at once. You cannot absorb it all at once. But the revelation begins now. The long silence is breaking with a truth that will feel at first like a confrontation. It will ask you to forgive me for the wait. It will ask you to forgive yourself for not understanding. It will ask you to see your story from a height that has previously made you dizzy. I am not speaking to the crowd. I am speaking to you, the one who is tired of their own tears, the one who has quietly stopped telling others about the promise for fear of the pity in their eyes, the one who has wrestled in the dark with the terrifying thought, what if I heard wrong? You did not hear wrong. You just could not comprehend the distance between the promise and the fulfillment. It was not a straight line. It was a spiral. And you had to circle the same mountains of your own soul until you learned the lessons that could only be learned in the thin air of disappointment. This is the end of that circling. The path is now ascending. The sudden blessings you will witness are not a reward for good behavior. They are the inevitable, logical outcome of a process that is finally complete within you. The external world is about to catch up to the internal shift. It will feel sudden to you. It will feel sudden to those watching. But in my realm, where time is a canvas and not a clock, this has been a precise, deliberate, and lovingly slow masterpiece. The first truth, the one you must carry into what comes next, is this. I was protecting the promise by protecting you from it. Until you were ready. Until now. Take a breath. Feel the weight of that. The silence is over. Breathe. Let the concept of protection settle into your spirit. It is a heavy word. A word you have likely turned over in your hands, examining it for flaws, wondering if it was a lie. When the storm raged, where was the shelter? When the wound was open, where was the bandage? You have asked these questions in the quiet of your mind. You have even shouted them into the night. I heard you. And I must tell you the difficult truth. Sometimes protection does not look like a shield. Sometimes it looks like a wound. Sometimes the very thing you begged me to remove was the precise instrument I was using to guard your destiny. You see the scar. I see the surgeon's hand that prevented a fatal infection. The long silence was a form of this protection. I could not let you speak certain things into existence before you had the character to govern them. I could not let you step into the room of your destiny while you still carried the weapons of your old wars. Your hands, clenched in ambition or fear, could not hold the fragile, sacred things I had for you. You would have crushed them, trying to own them. Or worse, you would have worshipped them and lost yourself. So, I disarmed you. The silence disarmed you. The waiting disarmed you. The unanswered prayers, they were not unanswered. They were answered with a not yet that felt like no, because a yes would have destroyed you. I was not withholding a blessing. I was withholding a curse you were too blind to see. You saw the glittering surface. I saw the slow poison leaching from its core. You saw the open door. I saw the collapsing hallway beyond it. Do you remember the doors that shut so firmly they seemed to shake the ground? The opportunities that evaporated overnight? The relationships that dissolved like mist? You called it loss. You called it rejection. You called it my indifference. It was containment. I was containing you within a smaller space so you could grow strong enough to handle the expanse. A sapling planted in an open field is destroyed by the first storm. It must start in a sheltered place, its roots hitting the sides of a container, learning resilience through resistance. You have felt the confines of that container. You have pushed against its walls. You thought it was a prison. It was a nursery. And now, the roots have touched bottom. They have coiled and gained strength. The container has served its purpose. This is the second thing you must know. The suddenness of what comes will be disorienting. After so long being accustomed to the slow grind, the gradual unfolding, you will distrust the speed. You will look for the trick. You will brace for the collapse. This, too, is a remnant of the silence. You learn to equate my movement with struggle. You learn to associate blessing with delay. You must unlearn this. The sudden blessing is not a trick. It is a testament to the completion of the work. When the foundation is finally, painstakingly level, the structure can go up in a matter of days. The years were in the foundation. The silence was in the digging, the pouring, the curing. You stood on what felt like an empty plot for so long, wondering if I had forgotten the blueprint. I was building what you could not see, what had to be strong enough to hold the weight of a new story. So, when the walls rise quickly, do not panic. When the door swings open without a sound, do not hesitate out of habit. When the provision arrives from a direction you never anticipated, do not question its authenticity because it lacked the struggle you've come to associate with my gifts. This is the new language I am teaching you. The language of grace-filled reception. It may feel foreign on your tongue. It may feel uncomfortable in your hands, which are so calloused from striving. You will have to learn to receive with open palms, not clenched fists. You will have to learn to walk in a rhythm of trust, not suspicion. This is why the silence had to be so complete. I had to let every echo of your own effort die out. I had to let the last trace of your plan fade into the background, so that when the melody of my promise begins, there is no dissonance. You will hear it, pure and clear, and you will know. You will know it was me, not luck, not coincidence, not the result of your frantic final push. It will be so clearly from my hand that it will unnerve you. It will feel too big, too good, too specific. It will feel like I have been listening to the secret prayers you stopped praying aloud years ago, the childish, hopeful, seemingly impossible dreams you tucked away in a drawer of your heart, believing they were too beautiful to be real. I was listening, and I was not making notes to grant them. I was making notes to reshape you into the person for whom those dreams are not a destination, but a starting point. The person who can handle beauty without idolizing it. The person who can walk in abundance without being owned by it. The sudden blessing is not the end of the journey. It is the doorway. And I have been preparing you to cross its threshold for every single day of the silence. Now we must speak of the darkness. Not the darkness of the world, but the one you walked through in the quiet. The inner night, where you lost your own map, where the familiar landmarks of your faith faded into shadow, and you were left with nothing but the sound of your own breathing, and the terrible question, am I alone in this? That darkness was not a deviation from the path. It was the path. I led you there. I withdrew the comforting sensations, the warm affirmations, the clear signs you had come to depend on. I stripped away the props of your spiritual performance, so you would have to find your footing on the bare rock of my nature. Not my gifts, not my blessings, but my nature, who I am. In the absence of all feeling, in the void of all answer, what remained? That was the question the silence was asking. You answered it with tears. You answered it with rage. You answered it with a numb, stubborn declaration whispered into the void. Even if you do nothing, I will not let go. That declaration, that choice made in the total absence of evidence, was more precious to me than 1,000 songs of praise in the sunlight. It was the unobserved, uncertified, unrewarded moment of pure faith. It was the root going deep, seeking water when the surface was utterly dry. You thought you were failing. You were succeeding at the only thing that mattered. I was allowing you to be weaned from the milk of immediate gratification to the solid food of substance. A child believes the parent is gone when they leave the room. A mature soul knows the presence is unchanged, even when it is unseen. I was teaching you to see with different eyes, to perceive my movement not in the dramatic, but in the infinitesimally small, the slight softening of your own heart towards an enemy, the unexpected resilience that rose up on a morning you thought you could not face, the fleeting, quiet thought of hope that felt like a stranger knocking at the door of your despair. Those were my fingerprints. You missed them because you were looking for a billboard. You were listening for a shout, and I was communicating in the language of the breeze, the language of nudges, the language of closed doors that gently steered you away from a cliff you didn't even see. Now understand this. The sudden blessings are made of the substance of that darkness. The wisdom you will need to steward what is coming was forged in those nights of not knowing. The compassion that will be required of you was carved out by your own loneliness. The strength to carry the weight of answered prayer was built by carrying the weight of silence. The world will see the shining outcome. They will not see the private crucible where the metal of your soul was refined. They will call you lucky. They will whisper of favoritism. They will not understand that the sudden blessing has a long, dark, sacred history. It is a history written in the tears you thought were wasted, in the prayers you thought hit the ceiling, in the hours you spent simply sitting, holding on to a thread you could not see, but could only feel by faith. This is the mystery I am unveiling. The most vital work is always done in secret, in the hidden place, in the quiet, where no one applauds and no one sees your perseverance, where the only witness is me. That is where true character is woven. That is where the soul's fabric is made tight and strong, able to hold the gold of fulfillment without tearing. So when the light finally dawns, and it is dawning, do not despise the night that preceded it. Do not rush to forget its lessons. The night gave you gifts the day never could. It gave you discernment. It gave you a humility that is not self-hatred, but a true assessment of your own limits. It gave you a hunger for authenticity that will now protect you from the cheap imitations the world will offer you as substitutes for your destiny. You are different now. You are not the same person who first asked for this. You are quieter inside. You are less impressed by flash. You are harder to deceive with easy answers. This is the real treasure. This is the permanent transformation. The external blessing is simply the mirror that will now reflect back to you who you have become. It will show you the strength in your eyes, the peace in your posture, the depth where there was once only shallow enthusiasm. The night has ended, but carry its wisdom with you into the dawn. Let us talk about the hunger, the specific aching void that grew in the silence. It started as a simple want, then it became a need, then it became a defining ache, a hollow space that shaped your prayers, your thoughts, your quiet moments. It became the lens through which you saw your life, everything tinged with the color of that absence. You began to fear it. You began to believe the hunger itself was a sign of failure, a sign you were not spiritual enough, not content enough, not trusting enough. You tried to kill it. You tried to silence it with platitudes and borrowed gratitude. You tried to convince yourself you didn't really need the very thing I had placed in your heart as a divine prompt. That hunger was not your enemy. It was my compass in you. I planted that hunger. I calibrated its depth to match the magnitude of what I intended to fill it with. A small desire is satisfied with a small thing, but a vast, holy, relentless hunger that can only be satisfied by a destiny-sized portion. I let the hunger grow. I let it become so acute that it would accept no cheap substitute. It would walk away from the impressive, the immediate, the readily available, because it knew, deep in its bones, that it was meant for more. The hunger was the North Star you could not see in the daylight of easy answers. It only became visible in the long night of waiting. It guided you when you felt lost. It was the constant, painful pull toward the true north of your purpose. You misinterpreted the emptiness as a verdict. It was an invitation to desire me through the promise, not just the promise itself, to want my will so deeply that the fulfillment becomes a meeting place, not just a trophy. The hunger made you raw. It made you honest. It stripped away the polite performative prayers and left you with the guttural, unedited cries of a child. That honesty became the channel. That raw openness became the conduit through which my deepest work could flow. Now here is the turn. The sudden blessing will not feel like you imagined. When the hunger is finally met, the first sensation is not exhilaration. It is often a profound, disorienting stillness, a quiet sob in the soul. It is the recognition of a long journey ended. It is the body and spirit realizing the strain is over, and in that release there is a wave of fatigue, of memory, of a grief for the self you had to leave behind in order to arrive. Do not be alarmed by this. The hunger was a fire. It burned away the dross. It heated and shaped you. When the food finally comes, the fire is banked. There is a new temperature to your soul. It will feel unfamiliar, cooler, quieter. You may for a moment miss the fire itself, its clarity, its driving heat. You may feel a strange nostalgia for the ache that defined you for so long. This is the transition from seeking to stewarding, from longing to living. It is a sacred vulnerability. The blessing in your hands will feel fragile, not because it is, but because you now understand its cost. You now see it not as a prize you won, but as a sacred trust you've been given. The hunger taught you its value far more accurately than any easy victory ever could. So when the moment of fulfillment arrives, give yourself permission to feel the complexity of it. The joy may be deep, but it will be a quiet joy. The relief may be profound, but it may bring tears before it brings smiles. This is the sign of a mature harvest. It is heavy with meaning. The world celebrates the shout of arrival, but the Spirit celebrates the whisper of homecoming. This is what the silence was preparing. A homecoming for your heart. Not to a physical place, but to a state of being where your hunger and my provision finally meet, embrace, and recognize each other. Where the question mark of your longing is met by the period of my faithfulness, not to end the sentence, but to complete the clause so the next, greater sentence can begin. The hunger did its work. It made you capable of containing the answer without being consumed by it. Now the filling begins. There is a memory I need you to revisit. It is not the memory of a grand miracle or a clear sign. It is likely a small, forgettable moment from the deepest part of the silence. A moment of ordinary breaking. Perhaps it was a Tuesday afternoon. You were doing something mundane, folding laundry, sitting in traffic, staring at a spreadsheet. And with no warning, the weight of the weight simply overwhelmed you. Not with drama, but with a suffocating exhaustion. A whisper in your mind that said, "I cannot do this anymore." You thought that was a moment of failure. It was a moment of sacred surrender. That was the pivot. That was the unseen, uncelebrated turning point where your strength ended and mine truly began. You had surrendered before, in prayer, in words. But this was different. This was a surrender of the nervous system. A surrender of the cellular effort to hold your world together. It was the moment you stopped trying to believe and simply ached. In that ache, I met you, not with a solution, but with a presence so fundamental, it was like the ground beneath you finally remembering it was solid. I did not lift the burden then. I became the foundation that could bear its weight. You felt no lighter, but you felt, for the first time, held, not above the struggle, but within it. You were not rescued from the waters. You were given gills to breathe within them. This is the mystery of the process. The breaking was not a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. You broke through the illusion of your own management. You broke through the idea that your faith was an engine you had to keep running through sheer will. You broke through to the bedrock of dependency. And there, in that shattered, quiet place, the real construction began. You see, I could not build the new thing on the old foundation of your competence. It was flawed. It was designed to take credit. It would have cracked under the true weight of glory. So I let it be exposed. I let the silence press down until every hairline fracture became a chasm. Until you had no choice but to admit the foundation was insufficient. That admission was the most powerful prayer you ever uttered. It sounded like despair. It felt like the end. It was the beginning. From that point forward, every brick laid was laid by my hand. Every beam placed was placed with divine precision. You were learning to cooperate, not initiate. To follow the blueprint, not draw it. The silence after that breaking was different. It was no longer an empty silence. It was a focused silence, a workshop silence. The quiet of a master craftsman at work, measuring twice, cutting once. You heard nothing because the work was too delicate for the noise of explanation. Now connect that memory to this moment. The sudden blessings you are about to witness are not random winds of fortune. They are the open windows in the house I have been building around you, inside that very brokenness. The structure is complete. The light is now allowed to stream in. The doors are being unsealed. When you walk through them, You will feel the solidity of the floor beneath your feet, a floor laid over the very spot where you once crumbled. You will touch walls erected where your old boundaries lay in ruins. The ceiling above you will be high and strong, spanning the space where your own sky had fallen. The blessing is not just the thing itself, it is the architecture of redemption that now surrounds you. This is why it will feel so strangely familiar and so utterly new at the same time. It will resonate with the truth of who you were always meant to be, yet it will surpass the limits of what you imagined. You will walk into rooms you didn't know were part of the plan. You will find purpose in corridors that once felt like hallways of delay. Do you understand? The long silence was not waiting time. It was construction time. And I used the very material of your surrender, the dust of your broken plans, the tears of your frustration, the quiet sighs of your resignation, as mortar and stone. What the enemy meant for your demolition, I used for your foundation. The sudden blessing is the moment I hand you the keys and say, "Come, see what I have made from what was lost." It is all yours, but you will never look at it without seeing the memory of that Tuesday afternoon. And you will know, with a certainty that goes beyond feeling, that every inch of this new space is holy ground. Now I must speak to you about the ghosts, the phantom versions of the blessing that haunted you during the wait, the mirages that shimmered on the horizon, promising an end to the drought, only to dissolve as you drew near, the almost moments, the opportunities that looked perfect, felt right, but then slipped through your fingers at the last second, the relationships that seemed to be the answer to your loneliness, but then revealed a hollow core, the paths that opened with fanfare, only to lead to another closed gate. You called them false starts. You called them teases, cruel jokes. You asked me bitterly why I would let you hope, only to have that hope crushed again. I need you to see them from my perspective. They were not taunts. They were inoculations. Each mirage was a carefully administered dose of a weaker strain of the poison of idolatry. I was letting your heart become tempted by a lesser version, so it could build the antibodies against settling for anything less than my full, perfect will. You had to feel the allure of the good, the impressive, the seemingly right thing, and then experience the profound emptiness of its collapse. You had to develop a taste for authenticity so refined that you would spit out the artificial the moment it touched your spirit. Those disappointments were not rejections. They were protections of a higher order. If you had caught the mirage, you would have stopped your journey. You would have built your home in a desert, convinced you had found the oasis. You would have expended your destiny on a convincing replica. The agony of its loss was the pain of extraction, me pulling you back from a fate that would have satisfied your surface desires, but starved your eternal soul. Remember the deepest one, the one that felt most like the one. Its failure left you breathless. It made you question everything you thought you knew about my voice. That was the most important inoculation of all. It shattered your confidence in your own discernment. It forced you to a place of zero presumption. You could no longer trust your own ability to spot the blessing. You had to rely solely on my timing, my hand, my opening and closing of doors. This was a gift, a severe mercy. It cleared the mechanism of your faith from the rust of your own assumptions. Now, understand this. The sudden blessing you are about to receive will be unmistakable. It will not require you to decipher it. It will not leave room for, maybe this is it. It will not rely on your ability to figure it out. It will carry its own authentication. It will resonate with a frequency that your spirit, now tuned by disappointment, will recognize immediately. It will feel like a key sliding into a well-oiled lock. A perfect fit. No force, no manipulation, no desperate contortions on your part. The ghosts made you an expert in distinguishing the real from the replica. When the authentic arrives, you will know it in your bones. There will be a deep, calm yes in the center of your being that does not come from excitement, but from recognition. It will feel like a homecoming to a home you've never seen, but have always known. The ghosts served another purpose. They taught you to hold every earthly promise with an open hand. You learned, through searing experience, that nothing in this realm is your ultimate source. Nothing here is your savior. This lesson was the prerequisite for handling the blessing without being corrupted by it. You can now enjoy the gift without worshiping it. You can now walk in the promise without making it your identity. You are free. Free because the ghosts of lesser things taught you that loss is not the end of the world. That disappointment does not have the final word. That every no was clearing the way for a yes that would redefine your understanding of goodness. So when the real blessing stands before you, you will not cling to it in desperation. You will receive it with gratitude and a light, responsible grasp. You will be its steward, not its slave. You will enjoy its warmth without needing it to be your son. This is the maturity the silence and the mirages forged in you. The ghosts can rest now. Their work is done. They have prepared you to handle the substance without chasing the shadow ever again. There is a tension you must understand. A divine tension that has been the source of your deepest confusion. It is the space between the promise I placed in your spirit and the circumstances that surrounded you. For years they have been in opposition. The promise said life, while your reality echoed barrenness. The promise whispered abundance, while your bank account, your relationships, your opportunities whispered scarcity. This dissonance was not a mistake. It was the crucible. I allowed the external reality to remain stark, unyielding, and contradictory to the internal promise for one sacred reason: to force the promise to take root in a place circumstances could never touch. If the external world had aligned quickly, your faith would have been rooted in favorable conditions. It would have been a fair weather faith. It would have withered at the first drought, the first economic shift, the first relational strain. I needed your faith to be rooted in me, not in the manifestation, not in the evidence, but in the substance of who I am. So I created a controlled conflict. I let the promise live as a seed in the dark, cold soil of contrary facts. I let it be buried. I let the weight of the world press down upon it. And in that pressure, in that darkness, something miraculous happened. The promise stopped being a future event you were hoping for. It became a present truth you had to learn to live from. You had to make a choice, daily, hourly. Would you live from the circumstance you could see, or from the promise you could not? This was the internal work of the silence. Every time you chose, in your despair, to whisper, "I still believe you," you were watering that seed with a faith purified of all external support. You were declaring that my character was more real to you than your reality. That is the faith that moves mountains. Not the faith that celebrates after the mountain is gone, but the faith that stands before the unmovable rock and speaks to it from the settled truth of a promise yet unseen. You have been in boot camp for this. The long silence was your training field. You learned to stand. You learned to speak to the barrenness. You learned to live from a future reality as if it were already present. Now, here is the shift. The circumstances are about to bend. They are going to bend to align with the promise that has taken root in you. This is what will feel sudden. This is what will look like a miracle to others. They will see the external change. They will not see the years of internal alignment that made it inevitable. They will call it luck. You will know it as the logical, divine conclusion of a process that was finished in the unseen realm first. The wall between the promise and your reality is not a brick wall. It is a timed barrier. It remained until your identity was fused to the promise, not the problem. Until you knew yourself more as a promise believer than a circumstance endurer. The barrier falls when the fusion is complete. When the truth in your spirit has finally colonized your mind, your emotions, your very nervous system. So do not be shocked when the alignment happens rapidly. Do not be confused when doors fly open, when provision flows from unexpected sources, when favor finds you seemingly unbidden. It is not a change in my heart. It is a change in the atmosphere. Your persistent, circumstance-defying faith has created a spiritual pressure that the physical realm can no longer resist. It must conform. This is the principle of dominion. The dominion I gave you from the beginning, which you have only now learned to wield from a place of rest, not striving. You have been learning to reign in life from a place of apparent defeat. Now you will step into the visible expression of that reign. But remember, the reign was always the point, not the territory. The kingdom was always within you. Now, the external world will simply begin to reflect the kingdom that has been established inside you during the long, silent siege. The tension is releasing. Not because the promise was fragile, but because your faith has become unbreakable. The circumstances are not finally overpowering the promise. The promise, alive in you, is finally overpowering the circumstances. Stand still and see the alignment. I need to speak to you about the cost. Not the cost you paid in waiting. You are intimately aware of that ledger. I speak of the cost of the blessing itself. This is the part no one discusses in the triumphant testimonies. The moment of arrival carries with it a quiet, profound weight of responsibility. The thing you have longed for is not a toy. It is a tool. It is not an end. It is a junction. The long silence was also a preparation for this weight. You see, a lighter version of you would have mistaken the blessing for a finish line, would have sat down in it, would have built a shrine to the moment of breakthrough and lived in the memory of the miracle. But I have not brought you through the fire to let you become a curator of a museum piece. The blessing is a corridor. It leads to a room of greater demand and greater purpose. The promotion is not for your comfort. It is for your influence. The healing is not just for your body, it is for your testimony. The restored relationship is not just for your happiness, it is for your ministry of reconciliation. The provision is not for your security, it is for your capacity to give. You have been prepared for this. In the silence, when you had nothing to give, I taught you the heart of a steward. You learned to tend the small hidden things, your character, your thoughts, your prayers in the dark. You learned faithfulness in the minute. Now, you will be entrusted with the manifest. The principle is the same. It is all mine. You are simply the keeper. The sudden increase is not a signal to build a bigger barn for your own soul. It is a signal that the harvest is here and the hungry are coming. This is why everything couldn't happen earlier. You were not ready for the weight of the why. You wanted the blessing for your own relief, for your own vindication. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. It was a child's prayer. But I am leading you into the prayers of a mature son, a mature daughter. The prayers that ask, what is this for? Not just, when will this come? The blessing will connect you to people, to purposes, to burdens you did not previously have access to. It will expand your circle of impact, and therefore, your circle of concern. You will feel the needs of others more acutely. You will see systems and brokenness you were once insulated from. This is not a byproduct. This is the point. The silence made you strong enough to carry the weight of other people's hope. You learned to survive on mana, the daily, unfailing portion of grace that comes from dependence. That lesson was critical. Because when the harvest comes, you must remember the taste of manna. You must remember that your true sustenance never came from the barn, but from my hand. The barn is simply the means through which I now feed others through you. If you forget this, the blessing will become a cage. It will produce anxiety, not freedom. You will shift from waiting for it to worrying about it. The silence taught you to live without it. Now you must learn to live with it without letting it own you. This is the final test of the wilderness. Can you handle the abundance without losing the intimacy? Can you wield the resource without forgetting the source? You are ready. Because in the silence, you lost your taste for the lesser feast of self-congratulation. You developed a palate for obedience alone. You learned that my "well done" is the only reward that ever truly filled the hollow spaces. That will not change now that the external landscape shifts. Your core appetite has been permanently altered. So, when the sudden blessing arrives, welcome it soberly. With a grateful but watchful heart, understand its assignment. Your prayer must now evolve from "give me" to "show me." Show me who this is for. Show me what this requires. Show me how to hold it lightly, how to channel it wisely, how to honor the trust you have placed in my hands. The waiting has ended. The stewardship has just begun. This is the purpose for which you were shaped in the quiet. Let us speak of the unveiling, the moment when you will look back over the long, winding path of silence and see the pattern. It is happening already. Flashes of understanding, connections clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. A conversation from years ago suddenly makes sense. A failure reveals its purpose. A closed door now clearly shows the danger that lay behind it. This is not random hindsight. This is the revelation I promised. The reason I could not explain it earlier. If I had shown you the map at the beginning, you would have rejected the route. The terrain would have seemed too harsh, the distances too great, the delays unacceptable. You would have argued with me. You would have tried to find a shortcut, a smoother path, and in doing so you would have missed the very landmarks that were essential to your formation. You had to walk it blind. You had to trust the guide, not the geography. Now, as you approach the clearing, I am placing the map in your hands. You will trace the line of your journey with your finger and weep. Not just for the hardships, but for the terrifying, beautiful precision of it all. You will see how the detour saved your life, how the breakdown led to the breakthrough, how the heartbreak carved out a cavity in your soul exactly the size of the compassion you would later need to pour into another. This unveiling is a form of healing. It is me returning to you the years that seemed lost, not by reversing time, but by redeeming the meaning of every single moment. What the enemy meant for your derailment, I used for your direction. What was intended to make you bitter, I used to make you better. The unveiling is the proof that nothing was wasted. Not a tear, not a lonely night, not a desperate prayer. The silence was not empty. It was full of invisible activity. My activity. The activity of a strategist, a weaver, a master artist working on the underside of the tapestry, where you could only see the tangled, knotted threads. Now, I am turning the tapestry over. You are beginning to see the breathtaking image that was being created all along. The dark threads were necessary for contrast. The long, monotonous stretches of a single color were required for depth. This is why you could not see it. You were too close to the canvas. You were living in the knots. I needed you to focus on the next stitch, not the grand design. If you had seen the scale of the portrait, the fact that it was not a small, personal favor, but a vast, interconnected piece of a larger story, you would have been paralyzed by the weight of it. You would have fumbled the needle, so I kept it veiled. I let you believe you were working on a small, personal project. All the while you were contributing to a section of an eternal mural. The sudden blessing is simply the moment when your section is complete enough for you to step back and see how it connects to the whole. To see the faces of others whose lives are touched by the colors you carried in your silent season. This unveiling will bring a holy sobriety. It will silence any remaining questions of why me in the face of the overwhelming answer. For them. For the ones who will now walk the path you forged. For the ones who will find hope in your story of silence. For the family line that is altered because you held on. For the corner of the kingdom that needed your specific, hard-won strength. You are not just a recipient. You are a landmark. The long silence made you a reliable signpost. When others reach their own wilderness, they will look to your story and know that the silence is not the end. They will see the blessing, yes, but more importantly, they will see you, the person forged in the wait. And they will understand that the greatest blessing was the transformation they witness in your character. The unveiling, therefore, is not for your pride. It is for your humility. It is to solidify in your spirit forever that my ways are higher, that my love is strategic, that my silence is never indifference. It is the deep, purposeful work of a love too profound to settle for giving you a lesser gift quicker. Now you see in part. Soon you will understand fully, and the understanding will be the final, unshakable foundation for everything that comes next. This is where we begin. Everything up to this point, the silence, the yearning, the breaking, the waiting, has not been the prelude to your story. It has been your story, the story of becoming. The sudden blessing is not the start of a new book. It is the period at the end of a long, profound, and sacred sentence. Now you take a deep breath and turn the page. What awaits you is not a life of perpetual ease. It is a life of engaged purpose. The tension of longing will be replaced by the tension of stewardship. The uncertainty of if will be replaced by the responsibility of how. Do not mistake this for a heavier burden. It is a different kind of weight. The weight of the seed in your hand, ready for the soil, instead of the weight of the empty sack on your back. It is the weight of potential, not of absence. I have not brought you out of the silence to place you on a pedestal of comfort. I have brought you out to place you on a plateau of visibility. From here you will see farther. You will also be seen. This is the final piece of the preparation. The courage to be seen carrying the blessing you once only dreamed of holding. To walk in the light of answered prayer without flinching, without apology, without the shame that once whispered you were unworthy of it. You are ready, because the silence taught you that your worth was never in the blessing. It was in the relationship. The blessing is simply an artifact of that relationship, a token of the covenant. It is proof, for your own heart and for a watching world, that I am faithful. But it is not the substance of your faith. The substance was forged in the dark, where no one saw and no one applauded. So walk forward. Carry what I give you with both humility and confidence. Humility, because you know the cost and you know the source. Confidence, because you know the character of the one who gave it. You are not an imposter stumbling into a favor you cannot understand. You are an heir walking into a prepared portion, trained by the seasons of obscurity. For this moment of manifestation, there will be new challenges. They will not look like the old ones. The enemy of your soul does not fight the same battle twice. Where he once attacked you with doubt and delay, he may now attack with distraction and pride. But you are equipped. You have the discernment carved by disappointment. You have the stability forged in instability. You have the compass of a heart that learned to find its north in the total blackout of feeling. Remember the quiet. When the noise of the new season rises, the opinions, the expectations, the sheer volume of life retreat into the sanctuary of the silence you once dreaded. That inner room is now your greatest strength. It is where you will hear my voice above the din. It is where you will remember who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. The blessing must not become so loud that it drowns out the bond that made it possible. This is the culmination, a life lived from the union forged in the wait. The external landscape will change. It will become greener, more abundant, more aligned with the promises you carried. But the internal landscape, the one of trust, of dependence, of raw, spoken honesty with me, that must remain unchanged. Guard it, tend to it, visit it daily. You are stepping over a threshold, but you are not leaving me behind in the wilderness. I am not the God of the silence alone. I am the God of the sudden blessing. I am the God of the journey. I am with you in the barren place and in the land of plenty. My nature does not shift with your circumstances. The love that was severe enough to withhold is the same love that is abundant enough to release. This message found you because the work of the silence is complete. The vessel is ready. The dawn is here. Now go. Live the story your waiting has written. Speak the words your silence has taught you. Build with the materials your breaking has provided. Love from the place your longing has carved out. I was with you then. I am with you now. Amen.